When two worlds combine. I just woke up. Thought I'd show myself completely vulnerable. In my pajamas. Just for a change. Card number 1 is the Page of Cups. Because even if that makes me vulnerable, naive, seeming, what's really going on behind this exterior is this. I wrote an album called Fragments, and it was all about the concept of the fragmented pieces of ourselves and how we can split. You know how purple. You know how people talk about, I'm hearing that song. One-eye, na-na, flying purple people eater, na-na-na-na, flying purple people eater. And you know how people used to, at least that I've seen it, way back in the day, like on Facebook, for religion, people would put like the flying spaghetti monster instead of like Christianity or Buddhism. They'd put the flying spaghetti monster. I feel like sometimes what happens to us is when we split, and this can happen through honk honk trigger warning trauma, and a lot of it's unseen. What happens to us, right? A lot of it happens in the dark, right? In our most vulnerable position, right? It creates a space for something else to enter. Now, I'm not necessarily talking about demon possession, because I believe there is a healthy dose of working with demons. You know, people call Lilith a demon. People call Hecate a demon, even though I don't believe that. Mother, Hecate, is a goddess. And she's helped me through some of the darkest things in my soul. Things that I would not dare speak out of my mouth, because I came from a Christian home where I couldn't really say much about my pains, right? And a lot of my pain and my splitting came from the environment that I lived in. And I'm saying all of this because I feel like a lot of you relate to this. Even if you're like 57 years old, you know, it's just because it's been a while since you were a kid doesn't mean that this didn't still happen. And what I was going to say here is when we split through a trauma, right? And it can be something small, can be something big. It can be, you know, something ongoing, like, you know, my parents never came to any of my events. Like this one time, and this is not even, you know, for me, I've just chosen to forgive my parents. Doesn't mean that I'm in contact with them, but I've just chosen to forgive them. And actually, surprisingly, Hecate was the one who helped me with that, because she explained to me that, and I'm going to get to this middle part here. She explained to me that if you don't let this go, it's going to be a picture of their face right in the middle here. And that's what I was talking about before about like demons. It's not necessarily a demon inhabiting you, but these things, they inhabit the space between when we're split, when the trauma happens. It's like their face is branded on the inside of you. And so for me, forgiveness is not really about forgiving the other person. It's more about releasing the person from their debt that they owe you, and deciding to, it's kind of like a collections agency, a collections company, you decide to give that debt, that situation, that case off to the higher ups to handle. Like that's, why we have famous phrases like only God can judge me, and like, just put it at the cross of Jesus and all that stuff, right? Because, in my opinion, because we don't want to be holding that space for the rest of our lives with somebody else, something they might not even remember. Like my parents might not even remember they did this, but it was a very important event to me. I was not in sports. All my cousins were in sports, and they were always, praised for that. And I thought it was great as well. I'm not saying anything about that. I'm just saying I was always different, right? I wasn't like them, so I didn't have really like many events like that. And one of the events that I had, because I was just more of like an artsy kid, I was different, and maybe some of you relate to that. Why do I want to do this right now? It's like this. It's like I want to protect the kid. Yeah, protect. We need to learn to protect the kid. The kid inside. See, we have the Fool here. This wonderment, sometimes what happens is we lose it through these traumas. So I had this event at church. I wrote this sketch, and I was performing it with my youth group. I was probably like 14, 15 years old, and I felt so proud of myself. We had practiced it. This was my first like true performance. And I wrote it, and I had a bunch of people with me, and then we also led the worship for that day. We did the songs. I sang the songs with everybody. So basically we took over the entire church service. And I was so proud of myself. And I remember looking out in the audience while I was holding the microphone. And I was pacing back and forth, holding the microphone. This was after the performance. This was after, and I was preaching. And I was explaining what the performance was about. And it was about, trigger warning, my self-harm, and how Jesus had delivered me from self-harming. I used to wear those Hot Topic wristbands, all up my arms. And then, many times after this, I did relapse through the years. I self-harmed all the way up through... it was a 17-year stint, and I started when I was 13, so if we do the math, But anyways, I was explaining that. And I looked out into the audience and I realized my parents weren't there. I think this was the first time I truly was public speaking. And I spoke for quite a while. It was one of the proudest moments of my life because it combined music, theater, and speaking. And I remember looking out in the audience and my parents weren't there. If you feel comfortable, put down in the comments so that we can all gather around energetically and love you. Put down in the comments something like that happened to you. And I'll read through and I'll give you a virtual hug, because even if you are older and this stuff happened years ago, it creates this space for something to enter. And that something, could be like I did a personal reading for a lady yesterday, and the word samskara kept coming through. It can create these samskaras in us. And even if we're grown, we're not kids anymore. It's surprising how these things in the darkness can just kind of hang over us like a haunting. I believe I said those exact words to her, that it's not that it's actually going to stop us, with this devil here. It's not like it's actually going to stop us from living our lives and trying new things and going new places. It's not like it's going to stop us from having relationships or getting married or celebrating. It's not like it's going to stop us, but it's like it places this little block, or samskara, if you want to call it that, if you like that terminology. I kind of like it better than talking about like trauma this, trauma that, especially because I'm not a doctor. Just a gal who's been through a lot of myself. Speaking from more of an artistic perspective than I am a perspective of a doctor. Always. But it's like this is a beautiful imagery, but sometimes I look at it as it's like a candid picture, where it's like just taking a picture of yourself in that moment. Like, he's not moving off of this balcony. He's just standing there. And he has the whole world in his hands, but it's almost like he's slightly paralyzed. Like, he has the wand in his hand, he's ready to go, but it's like there's this wand behind him. Here, the things that happened in his past, something that maybe we either forgot about or we didn't think was that big of a deal. Like I said, I told that story about, I looked out into the audience and it was like one of the highlights of my life up until that moment. I was so proud of myself. It was my first time like really doing something like that, holding that microphone, standing in front of a full room of people, pacing back and forth. I felt like a real speaker. And in that moment, I felt like something was imparted into me, where I felt like, this is something I'm going to be doing down the line, right? And again, I tell these stories, guys, not just to tell stories about myself. I'm telling them to elicit this energy so that you can think about your own stories, right? I'm just creating like a kumbaya energy. Like, we're all sitting around the fire. We're all sharing the talking stick. Again, you can always leave in the comments any words that you want to share or stories you want to share. This is an open space. It's inclusive. Just please, be respectful in the comments, but, we can talk about lots of different things. So, anyways, card number 2 is the 2 of Cups. See, we have 2, 2, 2. Twos are, in today's reading specifically, about coming back together. Coming back together. Where we were apart before. It's kind of like pulling your energy back, claiming that moment back. Like going back. A lot of this practice I have seen throughout IFS parts work, which is, it's kind of more fringe psychology, but I've seen psychologists use parts work, even in my local area. Like, I've searched it before, like psychologists that use parts work. Basically, parts work is you go into this semi-meditative space. To me, it's similar to hypnosis, and I'm a big proponent of hypnosis. I believe in hypnosis. Dolores Cannon's work is very fascinating if you've never looked into her. She literally even has this whole series on Nostradamus where supposedly, of course it's all supposedly, but I tend to believe in the fringy stuff, right? But supposedly this man was channeling Nostradamus, and she has all this information. She has Jesus and the Essenes, which supposedly was this like secret society of sorts of, magicians sort of in the time of Jesus, that was channeled through, of course, upon thousands of other things that we could talk about. But my point is that this subconscious realm, Carl Jung said, until we make the subconscious, all that stuff in the middle, until we make that subconscious conscious, it will rule your life. And you'll call it fate. Right? You'll say, oh, this is just how my life goes, this is just how my relationships go. Devil after devil, every time I step out and try to do something new, try to start that business, try to have that better life, make more money, move somewhere, something happens. That's just my fate. That's just how it goes. I'm still a positive person, but this is just how life has kind of shaped out for me. We all have devils, and that's actually a pretty decent attitude to have, if I'm honest with you. It's more positive than most to think that way, but my challenge to us is to just take a peek at what could be this blockage, this samskara, if you will. What happened? What happened? And IFS parts work can help with that, internal family systems. Basically, it's like you go into this quasi-meditative state, and I have like multiple books on it. If you're curious, I can talk a little bit more on that. Again, I'm not a doctor, just a gal. But I've read a lot about it, and I've done it on myself. I've done it on myself many times, and he actually says in the book that he doesn't necessarily recommend that, and this was the man who really helped bring it forward. But anyways, you're here for controversial opinions, right? Okay. You go down in there and you start talking to these parts of yourself, here. And you talk to the younger you that was standing in front of that crowd, so proud of yourself, and your parents weren't there. And again, this is not some like sob. Sorry guys, my phone ran out of space. I got some water. I took a second, get the rainbow scarf, spruce it up in here. Come on, what are we doing here? All right. It's pretty early in the morning, so. But it's like I jolted out of bed and I just had to, I think it's because I've been having these dreams. Let me know if you guys have been having crazy dreams in the comments. I had this dream and it's like it sparked, I don't remember all the details, but it sparked this sort of information in me, like remembering things from the past. Cheers. My brother Mitch always used to say that. He'd be holding the can of beer and he'd go, cheers. I miss him. Love you, brother. He was a Sagittarius. What a great guy. Oof. For those of you who have lost a sibling, you understand it. Lost you again. But I've had some really amazing comments from people talking about how they've lost a loved one. And, the way I see it is that we have them on the other side. Like, they're connected to the higher realms and they can, like, report back to us. So really, it's like they're in a higher form than we remember them, right? Like, they're here. They can help us from where they are to heal through some of this stuff. So we call on our ancestors right now to help us come back together, to bring the pieces of our hearts back together. That album Fragments that I wrote a few years ago, it's back when I was still a Christian minister. And it's, there's a lot of Christian themes on it, but that album actually was when I was going through my deconstruction, my Christian deconstruction or deconversion. I wrote it at that time. I think I wrote it back in 2021. And I think I'm actually holding this mirror. Yeah, it's this mirror. I've had this thing for years. I've used it a lot in different pieces for whatever reason. But anyways, card number 3 is the Death card. I'm not seeing this as much as a transformation today as I am seeing it as the energy of transformation. It's like this swirling energy that transforms a person. I'm seeing it as that powerful scorpionic energy. Remember how I started off talking about like Lilith and Hecate? Like they're really, really good with like the darker themes. Like if you've been through trigger warning, SA, if you've been through DV, if you've been through when you were younger, SA, if you've gone through any sort of anything that you don't even really want to talk about, you don't have to talk to anybody about it. You can talk to the goddesses. They understand. Like Hecate has been like a mother to me. I love Sarah's channel, That Divination Witch. Shout out to Sarah. I'm a big fan of her channel. She talks a lot about Hecate and other deities. If you're interested in going deeper with understanding more from a very eloquent and beautiful perspective. She's a great teacher. You can head on over to Sarah's channel at That Divination Witch. But anyways, the death card here. I'm seeing this swirling motion. It's like a regeneration, but really it's actually kind of like a cyclone. I'm seeing it as this scorpionic energy where it's drudging up. Like I had that dream, it was drudging up some things for me. Of course, that can feel very uncomfortable. To drudge up that old devil, that old snake. What is that scripture? I think it's in the book of Revelation. But anyways, it's that energy. It's like drudging up that old stuff from the subconscious mind. But if this is actually a benefit, because if we don't make that subconscious conscious, it will rule our lives, and then we'll call it fate, or we'll think that we're just bound and trapped to a certain way of being, that we won't ever have like true love, we won't ever have good finances, we will only ever have broken marriages and broken work contracts and all this crap. And why is that? It's because of the space that we let these entities live in rent free. I believe it's more of an energy that imagine that this evil eye was placed here, and it had like a consciousness of its own. I'm seeing this being that I've seen before when I've traversed the underworld, and I'm really actually not kidding about that. Normally I make a joke like when I've traversed the underworld, but no, like actually when I've traversed the underworld, I've seen this being. Sorry guys, my alarm went off. Look how many interruptions we've had in this reading. Interesting. Just take note of that. When I've traversed the underworld, I've seen this being. It has a lot of teeth on it. It looks kind of like a Venus flytrap. Let me know if you've seen something similar below down in the comments. I'm a seer, and I know a lot of us are here as well. So it looks kind of like a Venus flytrap with all of these teeth, but it's like it's alive. And it kind of like sinks its teeth into something, and there's many they're kind of like thin, long teeth, kind of like the prick of a thorn. They kind of look like thorns in a way, and it sticks. It looks like what's around this moon, the sun around the moon. It looks like those, and they sink into you. And it's like, to me, it's kind of like an energetic block that's created that many times we just forget about, or we just got older. But for me, like, look at me, I'm literally sitting here speaking right now. That event that I spoke at when I was 14, 15 years old was the precursor for everything that I did for the next 15 years or more, 15 plus years. So I didn't really think much of this stuff, especially, back when I was a Christian minister, especially when I thought it was like my duty that I just had to like basically just let this stuff go and just be like, well, I'm just going to be the bigger person. And yes, that's a good perspective, but what I believe a better perspective is, and this is something that Hecate helped me understand, forgiveness is not just about letting something go, right? It's about this swirling effect where this energy, this scorpionic energy can come in and into that space and like remove that blockage. Because yeah, we can be like, oh, I forgive him, it's fine, let bygones be bygones, but we're living with this though. We're living with this imprint, this samskara. And in my opinion, I feel like it's kind of actually like sort of an entity that lives there rent free, as they say, for all of our lives, this is my opinion, not for every case, but for some cases, that entity actually with this chain connects back to the original source and is feeding energy to the source that caused the original wound to begin with. Now, I'm not going to get deep into that, but not always, but sometimes I feel like that's what we're dealing with here, where we feel sapped and drained of energy. Why? Well, we got to take a look-see, what's up in that old box in the attic that's way behind all of the... Remember that scene, Chevy Chase, in... What's it called? Christmas. What's it called? Why can't I think of it, guys? It's early. Bless the Lord. Let me take a sip. Tell me down below. What is the name of that movie? Christmas Vacation. Thank you to everybody who came through on The Princess Bride in one of my last videos. As you wish. Sometimes we gotta go to the way back corner of that attic or that basement. And it's like that scene in the movie with Chevy Chase where he like moves all of the stuff out of the way and he puts on that big fur coat and he sits and he's crying and he's watching the home videos. Now, for some of us, we don't want to watch those home videos. Some of us don't want to go there, especially if when we were kids, stuff happened to us that we don't want to recount, and I understand that, but we've got to get to that space and see what's in there. But we're not alone. We can ask these experts to come in. In my case, I'm a big proponent of Hecate because she's been like a mother to me. When I could never cry and I could never express my pains when I was a young lass, I was able to, as a 33-year-old woman, cry on my living room floor in my house that people told me I would never have, by the way. Cried on my living room floor with Hecate, and she helped me release some of this stuff, and she helped me remove some of this stuff. And we have archangels. I work with the angels. I work like this. The real light and the real dark, they work together. They understand each other. It's like an ecosystem, in my opinion. Well, I should say, in my experience, because it's not just mental, it's experiential, and I'm sitting here to prove it, because honk honk, I should be dead. Okay? That's just simple. Should not be here. How am I here? Well, Metatron's Cube, Archangel Realm, Underworld Realm, helping me identify what's been in the dark, who I made agreements with, contracts, and why I'm still struggling today. Well, it's because, and again, shout out to Jess Puckett, the Chaos Witch. I bought the audiobook, The 4 Agreements, because she mentioned it in her live stream a couple weeks ago now, and I've been listening through that. And he, in his book, talked about how we make these agreements. Like, he gave this sad story of a little girl who came into the room and was singing loud and was just so happy, so joyful, so childlike, so full of like energy and love and just being herself. And her mother was just sitting there like so stressed out. And we've all been here, right, guys? We can be on the side of the mother. I could be on the side of, let me say it this way. I could be on the side of my parents, and I could be on the side of myself when it comes to this sort of stuff. So I try to be balanced. But, you know, this is a child we're talking about here in this story, and I was a child back then. And, you know, children are, you know, you can dent a kid. So anyways, all right. The story. The kid comes bopping in. Full of energy, full of life. And the mother snaps because she's very stressed. And she says something like, "Stop singing like that. Your voice is ugly." And there it is. There it is. Might as well get a tattoo right there. Get it right on the upper arm. It's like that scene on SpongeBob where SpongeBob is waiting in line and he's with those guys. "I eat nails for breakfast without any milk." And he has the mom tattoo and he flips it upside down and it says, "Wow." It's giving that. Okay, so it's like that. And then he talks about in the book how that little girl, not only did she not sing anymore, did she not express openly anymore, but now she has this wound here that was created. She actually, not only did she not sing anymore, she actually even had a hard time talking after that. And he explains, and this was in the first agreement, talking about be impeccable with your word. Words are powerful, so are actions, or non-actions, like my parents were just not in the audience. Omission is just as, can be just as painful and lasting as doing something to a person with an action. If you pull back your love and you neglect, that can be just as powerful as of a imprint, a branding, than anything else. So basically, this child had a hard time because he explains in the book, she made an agreement with those words, with that experience, that she was not a good singer and nobody wanted to hear her sing. And so people actually hated hearing her sing. So this is the thing. Even if we're older, even if we don't want to go there, I understand that. I mentioned there are practices, things like IFS parts work. Of course, there's always traditional cognitive therapy, right? There are friendships available in life, right? You know, we can, for those of us that do have healthy family, we can go to our family. You know, we can talk through this stuff and we can transform through this stuff. But really, I'm seeing this as like a breaking up. It's just the energy of the death card. It's the energy of death and transformation that can break up this block. It can break up the block so that we can release it. Because for a lot of us, unbeknownst to us, the subconscious, some of this stuff actually becomes part of our identity. Like, oh, you know, I like that little girl. It's like, oh, I'm a terrible singer. Maybe she would have been an opera singer that would have won an award. But because of that, she never even wanted to pursue it to begin with. This stuff is powerful. These things are agreements that we make with ourselves and other people. They're contracts in a way. They're agreements. And so we need to break this stuff if we want to be free. And some of us don't even know where to begin. And I was one of those people, which is what led me down the original rabbit trail back in like 2018. It was like 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021. What happened for me was I started doing some deeper level healing than I had done before, because I've always been on the healing train. I remember I started getting into psychology when I was 14. I actually wanted to become a psychologist, so I was heavily into that, but I took a different direction. I became a minister instead. But anyways, here I am now. So basically back in like 2018, I started doing some deep healing work, and I found things like IFS parts work, because I couldn't afford traditional therapy at that time, so I had to do my own research. And then I did have some amazing therapists along the way, so shout out, especially to my guidance counselor, Joe, that I had in college. He he was a good friend of my literature teacher, and she was the woman that gave me a good dent in the chest. She said, and she was retiring the next year, because this can apply to good stuff as well. She said to me that out of her 25 years of being Sorry, I had a call coming through. She said out of her 25 years of being a professor, that I was one of the top 5 writers that she had ever come across. And that was a positive one as well. But anyways, this man was a friend of hers. She recommended me to him. He helped me through a lot of stuff. So I started a deeper healing journey, came across some of this stuff, in turn ended up leading me to uncovering even deeper stuff that I didn't know that I felt. This was at the time when I was a Christian minister. I started thinking deeper and deeper and deeper. And then I started realizing, like, wait, I've always had clashing viewpoints with my parents in this religion. And I was just silenced, right? Instead of talking it through. Well, my dad's a Gemini, so of course we talked it through. We really debated it through for 25 years. But what I mean by this is he talked and I had to listen and agree. Love and light. I love you, Dad. And we love Geminis, right? Let's give a round of applause for Geminis. Okay, I love you. All right, but my point is that, in the shadow, love and light, Geminis, you can't argue with a Gemini, you know what I'm saying? All right. But basically, it caused me to go down deeper, where I started to see, like, wait, not only do I feel these ways about my story and myself and all the stuff I've been through, I started to unpack even deeper stuff in the deeper subconscious, where I was like, wait, I was just taught that this stuff was true. I was just taught that people were going to burn in hell. So what happened was I started doing this deep dive, into hell. And I'll talk about hell another day, because I have a lot of research on hell. Specifically, I've read many books on hell. I have a lot of opinions on hell. Let me know if you're interested in that from a theological perspective. But anyways, so I started uncovering even deeper things, where it led me down this rabbit hole of, like, wait, I don't believe that. What else don't I believe? Or what else don't I agree with? Speaking of agreements, what agreements have I made when I was, like, way younger, even back when I was at VBS summer camp down at the local Baptist church, where they had the cool space set up. I remember crawling through a cardboard box, and it was so cool. It was all dark in the room, and they had all these, like, glow-in-the-dark stars everywhere. It's like, and we have good memories, right? But at the same time, it's like, but where does this stuff come from? If we look at the subconscious and make it conscious, then we can at least take a look at it. Take a look at the facts. And then as adults, And this stuff could have even happened 3 years ago if you're an adult, but it's like as adults slash as older and wiser people, because we always grow and change with age, right? Hopefully, right? A lot of us do, if we're spiritual. We transform, we change. It's like we can bring this stuff to the surface and just look at it again and be like, do I still believe that? Is that part of my story? Is that this? Is that that? Once we bring it to the light of day, that's when we can actually break any agreements that we've made with people, places, things, even our own selves that no longer align with the version of us that we are now. All right. So much love, everybody. Protection as well for you as you go down, the rabbit hole into the underworld, into your shadow self, your shadow side, because we all have one. And, I learned from Christina Lopes. Shout out to Christina Lopes. I love her as well. She talked about the shadow side, and she talked about how the shadow is not just about all the bad stuff, it's about all the good stuff too. Like, there are gifts down there that we don't know about. Like, some of us are painters, some of us are writers, but because of all of these blockages that we have, those gifts don't even get to see the light of day, because all this other crap is taking up all the space where there could be something else there in the middle instead, but it's taking up all this space. So, once we start going down into the shadow self, we will find good things and bad things, quote unquote. So I love you guys. Remember, you can always listen to the show on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If you want to get a personal from me, info is down below. It's been Missy Gordon, the Meta Mystic here. I love you guys, and I will see you on the next one.